Hello and welcome to the Guitar Hang Podcast. I'm your host, John Stancorb. Today's hang is with the exceptional Mark Lettieri. As a guitar great, Mark has ignited stages with Snarky Puppy, Wolfpack, and the Fearless Flyers. But Mark's musical journey doesn't stop at performances. He has a partnership with PRS Guitars, and the creation of his new signature Fiore guitar is a testament to his innovative spirit. In my interview, we'll explore Mark's remarkable career, his diverse musical adventures, and the innovative strides he's taken in the world of guitar. Please make sure you hit the subscribe button below and ring the bell for notifications. And now, let's hang with Mark Lettieri.
We got back from China recently, and I've been staying up way later than I normally do, and just blazed through my alarm this morning.
Yeah.
Hopefully I didn't,
How was China?
It was pretty cool. Yeah, it's pretty great trip. Have you been there before?
I have not. A buddy of mine owns a music wholesale company and does a lot of business with them, with Corbin guitars, and it suggested that I go and do some demo stuff for them, but I've never gotten over there.
Yeah, it's pretty fascinating.
Yeah.
So cool, man.
Yeah, they say that it's everything and nothing that you'd expect. They have a whole very unique way of, once you get past the stuff that you hear in the news about China, there's what the rest of the world sees, and then there's what it's really like when you're there. So
right. Yeah, I experienced the similar. I mean, if you're just interacting with the people, it's like a normal place. Thankfully, we weren't interacting with government, I guess, necessarily, but
yeah. So I'm a former Dallas resident. I lived there from 2014 until 2019.
Oh, cool.
I had a guitar school in Grapevine. And,
awesome.
Yeah, lived near, in between Bedford and Grapevine.
Cool. Yeah, my wife's from Bedford.
Oh, okay. Actually. Was that where she grew up?
What's that?
She was raised.
Yeah, she grew up there. I grew up in California, but ended up here for college at TCU. So that's when we met shortly after that.
And you're a Bay Area guy?
Right.
Yeah. Are you a NFL guy? Or are you a 49ers fan or a Cowboys fan?
I'm technically a 49ers fan.
Oh.
So yeah, which is, my friends here hate me for it, but I love watching the Cowboys implode, but they're doing really well this year. So it's kind of one of those things where it's like, if the Niners don't make it, I'll root for the Cowboys. But if the Niners are, there's a chance it's always the Niners until I can't root for the Niners anymore.
Yeah.
And then I'll pick the Cowboys, but
yeah. You grew up in a very rich, fertile area for guitar players in terms of the Bay Area guys, Joe Satriani, Neil Sean, and then Robin Ford, and and then all the earlier stuff, the Haight Ashbury scene,
sure,
and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, well, when I was there, because I grew up a very, very big Joe Satriani fan, so he was kind of like the local guitar hero guy, and then the other guy was Charlie Hunter.
Charlie Hunter, yeah.
Who was the dude there at the time?
Yeah, there was a group of guys that were kind of Joe's students, like Charlie Hunter and Larry Lalonde from Primus. And...
Well, actually, one of my teacher was one of his.
Oh yeah.
His name's Gordon Kahn. He lives in Austin now.
Okay.
Ironically enough, but yeah, that was I remember seeing an ad in the paper for guitar teacher, beginner to experience, advanced all styles music theory student of Joe Satriani's, and I remember like freaking out and asking my mom if we could like afford to get this guy. And it wasn't like he was incredibly expensive, but
right.
In my mind it was like, oh my gosh, a celebrity. He studied with Joe. So
yeah. So when I heard Joe's first the first two, Not of This Earth and Surfing with the Alien, it was in a landscape of the big hair shredder guys. So it'd be easy to lump him into that kind of stuff, but you were hearing stuff from him, especially the first album, like first time you would hear something like the enigmatic mode or something like that, or just
Yeah.
really cool use of the
Right.
diminished scale, just really
Sure.
cool
Well,
stuff.
yeah, I think he always had compositionally, he always had way more in common with like the Return to Forevers and the
Yeah,
Weather Reports and the Alan Holdsworths, and the Jeff Becks rather than like the heavy hard rock guys.
right.
So,
Yeah, and to have a vision to be able to say, I want to be an instrumental player, but I want to be true to my influences, but also have something that's gonna kind of catch hold. I mean, that album. I mean, I guess prior
yeah.
it was Wired that would have been one of the bigger selling instrumental albums, but that was such a great album. I
Hmm.
kind of and to,
Yeah.
if that was one of your first exposures as a kid, that would be pretty pretty
Pretty
impressive to be.
pretty mind-blowing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, man.
Uh, did you start right away? I mean, when you're not by right away, like when you're still in single digit age or preteen?
I was in double digit age. I think I was 12
12.
when
Yeah.
I started getting my first lessons and studying with a friend's mom who played guitar, and it was kind of a cool little hang. My buddy would come over to my house and take art from my mom, and his mom would come over and teach me guitar. So it's nice California artistic afternoons.
Right. Very
Um,
wholesome kind of, yeah.
yeah, exactly. So that was cool. And it was right around the time when I was kind of discovering music on my own beyond what my parents were listening to in the house. Thankfully they have great taste in music, so they're boomers, quote unquote. So the soundtrack in our home was generally 60s and 70s rock and Motown and soul and a little bit of 80s pop and things like that. So all good music, thankfully. But around 12, 13 is when I found the radio for myself, and it was like I could listen to grunge rock and Soundgarden and Smashing Pumpkins and things like that. And then you started, I got into Jimi Hendrix and Santana and a lot of the kind of early guitar heroes. And then as I progressed on the instrument, started listening to players that were kind of more of the technical breed, like the Satrianis and the Steve Vais and Eric Johnsons, the G3s. So,
Oh yeah. Yeah,
yeah.
that would have you would have been 13 for the first G3 tour.
Yeah, I was a little young for that one, but I caught the one. Which one did I see? I saw one in high school.
Yeah.
Maybe it was like in 2000 or 2001 or something. That was like Joe, Steve, and John Petrucci.
Oh, Petrucci, yeah.
And I remember going with a friend, went with two friends, a guy and a girl, and I remember she was like, "Wow, John Petrucci's really hot," and I was like, "Okay, wait a minute. So I can play music with no words, and maybe girls will come."
Yeah.
He was wrong, but
Right.
but
Wasn't it,
there was one out there.
yeah, it wasn't exactly the way it would work out, but
Right.
the thing that strikes it about listening to your playing is that it would seem like you would have had to have an interest in drums or rhythm because so much of who you are as a player seems predicated by grooves, and your playing in particular
Sure.
is impeccable rhythm chops,
Thanks, man.
which is the sign of any amazing guitarist, because if you distill it down, that's such an integral part of your to be a whole player.
Hmm. Well, we've been talking a lot about guitar players, but a whole other half of my influence comes from funk and R&B music, and artists like Prince and Stevie Wonder and George Clinton and D'Angelo and Brothers Johnson and Steely Dan and all these. I guess you could maybe put Steely Dan in there, maybe not.
Yeah,
I don't really
yeah,
know. Maybe they groove. They had a lot of players on their records that were incredibly groovy. So all this to say, I am very influenced by rhythm and groove and bass lines and syncopation and rhythmic arrangements. I think a lot of times I find myself writing music where I just want to have a section that's a groove. I don't want a melody there. I just
right.
want a cool riff or a vibe, a nice groove for 16 bars or something. Um, but it also just was kind of a practical choice as I was getting older and starting to start my career as a musician. It was like, yeah, I could play guitar solos, but I was getting called because I could lock in with a band and play the music and come up with cool parts that fit an ensemble.
Right.
And so I've always been uh, driven by groove and arrangement, I think.
Right.
And so,
Yeah, I mean some of the great players like yourself, the studio guys like Luke and Lee
sure.
Ritenour, Ray Parker Jr., those guys, great players, but could come up with amazing parts with very little information given to them. And they
Yeah.
came up with it fast. They had to, you had to deliver. And
Yeah.
I think when you're coming from a place of musicality rather than it's very tempting to want to get into the gunslinger mode,
Sure.
of shredding.
Yeah.
It makes your lane very narrow when you're creating music that grooves.
Hmm.
Your chances of having a bigger, broader audience, and your runway's a lot longer than if
Mm.
you're just into
Yeah.
the shredding aspect.
Well, I think I've always liked instrumental music that included the entire band,
Right.
if that makes sense. Like I like, that's why those early Jeff Beck records were really cool
Yeah.
because it didn't sound like a guitar player playing to a backing track,
Yeah. Yeah. Great.
and
Yeah.
so not to say that all instrumental guitar music sounds like that, but a fair amount of it does, and then there's other stuff where it sounds very interactive, and you can tell the musicians, even if they weren't even in the same room, maybe it was overdubbed, but there's still the composition allows for all the instruments to really behave in a cool, cohesive way rather than just like the guitar, 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 and then these other guys that are playing somewhere, but we can't really hear them or feel them.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. That there is something to be said for that. Most of my friends and I, when we were kids, we went and hung out the skating rink, so we were listening to funk and R&B stuff. And
yeah, sure.
growing up in Cincinnati, one of our great exports besides baseball was funk. They had Bootsy,
Right.
you had the King Records thing, and James Brown had recorded there, and you had the
Hmm.
Isley Brothers, and in Dayton you
Yeah.
had Zapp and Roger Troutman, that kind of stuff. So that was
Right.
I grew up loving that kind of stuff, and like the Isley Brothers. I got into Hendrix by way of Ernie Isley.
That makes sense.
I really dug Ernie Isley, and then I found out, man, this Hendrix guy is kind of similar. I didn't realize that
Yeah.
that Ernie was the younger kid uh, hanging out with Hendrix when he was when playing with
Right.
Isley Brothers. But yeah, the funk thing is a very appealing thing because it's all about ensemble playing.
Hmm.
Especially going to see Earth, Wind, and Fire live as a kid is like that was an amazing thing. It's
I
not
bet
about
that
guitar
was.
solos, but it's just about you have everything. It's a smorgasbord of everything.
Right. Right. Yeah, of course. I mean, yeah, any kind of groove experience, even if it's just three players, in a trio or something. Like one of my favorite bands is King's X.
Oh yeah,
Um, and I mean, they've got sort of that funk, soul, bedrock kind of groove thing happening, but they mix it with their progressive metallic grunge kind of thing, and
yeah,
and there's just three guys,
yeah.
and they groove so hard.
And then to put the Beatles harmonies on top.
Yeah, well, what the vocals, then you're just like, why are these guys not the biggest band in the world? But that's for another podcast. I'm sure there's been much said about that.
So the some of the projects that you have gotten into started kind of the inception was Dallas Fort Worth R&B scene.
Yeah, actually, pretty much. I mean, even the instrumental music that I make now as a solo artist is still very heavily rooted in the DFW sound. I mean, everyone that plays on my records, 90% of them are from here, and they have that sound. And so even if I'm doing some kind of weird, aggressive, angular rock thing, I want that Dallas feel in the rhythm section. And so I'm trying to get all the flavors.
Right. Were
a
these
fan.
like North Texas guys or people that were
Um,
just from the area?
yes, or just like, well, not, I would say, man, not really. Some might have been kind of North Texas adjacent. Now, having said that, a lot of the Snarky Puppy, for example, started at North Texas. So the majority of those, the core of that band started at that school. But the other players that I've worked with, maybe went to North Texas for like a semester and then dropped out or something. But a lot of them were just homegrown here in the gospel R&B scene, just playing around town and getting gigs early on with big artists like Erica Badu or Kirk Franklin and God's Property or Roy Hargrove and the RH Factor, Marcus Miller, bands like artists like that. So North Texas played a little bit of a role in it, but really the crux of that kind of like Black American groove, super funk Dallas thing is just from here. It's just here in the water, you know. So I'm thankful that I've gotten to learn from that community and get to play with
Right.
them,
And
yeah, be a part of it.
there's some crossover between your group, Wolfpack, Snarky Puppy, and other. There's seems to be some satellite projects.
A little bit, yeah. We've all sort of, I guess maybe at this point we've all kind of played with each other in some respect. Now, Wolfpack and Snarky Puppy have never done a gig together, but there have been instances where, like the Snarky Horns, I think, have sat in with Wolfpack, and then of course I have the Fearless Flyers with Joe and Corey. So that's kind of probably the biggest link between the two bands. But yeah, I mean the circle's definitely getting smaller as we keep pushing forward both groups. But yeah, we've never played done a show like a double bill or anything like that together. The music's pretty different. I mean, I think people, it's instrumental, it's groove based, so I get that umbrella, but it's pretty different, and the fan base is a little different. But having said that, it's really cool to see that there is a place for creative instrumental music that maybe there wasn't 20 years ago. So maybe we have the internet to thank. I don't really know.
Are there any influences that people would be surprised to know that are things that you're really into that may not have surfaced in a recording, but somehow influence your style?
um, Probably. I mean, I don't know if it's much of a secret now, but I listen to heavy metal, metal
Yeah,
often, and I love Megadeth and Periphery and these heavier bands, and maybe that comes through in some of the music, but I don't think there's a totally wacky influence there. I was rocking some Backstreet Boys a couple weeks ago for a gig with my friend Bob Reynolds. We we played a show at the Baked Potato back in September, and we're just like, what are some songs we could do that no one's gonna know that we would ever think were cool? And I was like, how about some Backstreet Boys? Or maybe it was his idea. I think it might have been his idea. And then we both realized we're like, man, this is like a really well written pop song. Like these hooks are great. Why didn't I think of this? So I'm a sucker for a good old 80s 90s pop song.
yeah,
You
yeah,
know.
absolutely. Yeah, and that's the thing is that it's. I think that is the older that you get, it's the walls that we put up between different stylistic things, kind of like bins and
Yeah,
around.
you totally forget about them. Yeah, because when I was 15, it was like, I thought rap was terrible. I was just like, there's no melody. I didn't know anything. And then like you get to college and you're listening to Snoop Dogg and you're like, oh man, this is awesome. What was I missing the whole time? you know. So
Yeah,
yeah, it's the maturity is important, I think.
yeah. There's a kind of a survival thing, especially in your high school days, our high school days. Being metal was a way of a delineation between yourself and a lot of other groups. And if you couldn't find a particular niche to fit in,
Right.
wearing a piece sells, but who's buying Megadeth
Yeah.
would be the ticket into a club of some kind, whether it's the quarter.
Exactly. Yeah, it's more social than anything else.
It's a very yeah.
Hmm.
Somebody if you were going to a new school, and I moved quite a bit. I remember a Led Zeppelin T-shirt saved me desperately when I moved from Cincinnati to Florida as a
Mm,
kid. Like the day
yeah.
before school started, my grandmother bought me a Led Zeppelin T-shirt. I wore it the next day, and it was like instant friends.
Yeah. You find your tribe or whatever real quick. Yeah.
Yes. So, but you do get a bit precious about those, whatever it is that you're into. If it's
Sure.
prog rock or if it's metal or whatever it might be.
Yeah. 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 I think that's just normal youth. You have your thing that you and your buddies identify with, and then you go off to college or whatever and realize that there's a bigger world out there.
You,
So,
is there any um, request for you to score film or anything like that, or do any?
not yet. I'd like to. I mean, I'm pretty uneducated in the ways of like working with an orchestra, for example. But I mean, nowadays, I guess you could score with a laptop if you wanted to. But it's been something I'd like to get into. I think I don't have much practice doing it, so I would someone would have to be very patient with me probably. But um, yeah, I guess it's on the list. Maybe in another 10 years or something.
Yeah, because I was interviewing Lyle Workman, and
Oh yeah, well he's just a genius.
he had done the soundtrack for Superbad, and he was talking about they created this thing that was a kind of a pastiche to the '70s funk thing.
Right.
And as they're putting things together, they were like, "Well, what if we just got the guys?
Mm.
They got Jabo and Clyde Stubblefield and Bernie
I
Worrell."
didn't. Oh, I didn't know he had all those guys play on that. Oh,
Yeah.
that's awesome. Cool.
So when I was listening to the soundtrack to that. I was kind of like, man, I wonder if Mark would ever do something like that, because it doesn't have to be for a period piece about funk, because I think you're playing, and your sense of your musical sensibilities would lend itself to film scoring, because
Thanks.
you have a great sense of orchestration and timbre and using different instruments and different time feels,
Mm.
but at the core of it, it just grooves.
Mm. Well, thanks, man. Yeah, I'd love to. I probably need to find a buddy that's making an independent film or something, and get going that way. So if anybody's listening and you want
Yeah.
me to to score your indie film, let me know. Yeah. Oh, I remember I did. I mean, the closest thing I did. Well, I've done a couple things for like some commercials, like very, very simple things, and it was hard. It's like a 1.5 minute. You know, I think it was like a Blue Cross Blue Shield commercial or something, and they wanted like just baritone guitar throughout the whole thing, and I probably sent a dozen versions of something, and they all thought it was great, but then didn't go with any of them. So I was like, well, all right. It's like,
Yeah,
this is perfect. And then they were just like, but we're going to use what was on the demo. And you're like, okay.
yeah. The baritone is such a great instrument. I for years I had an Ernie Ball. It was like a prototype. The company was called OLP. It was officially
I
licensed.
remember that. Yeah. I remember when those were around.
I had a black single pickup baritone guitar. Absolutely loved it. And a student of mine had been hounding me for a good 3 or 4 years to sell it to me. He's like, "You never play it. You never play it." And I'm like, "But yeah, the baritone is just it." The thing I love about that, or any lap steel, any instrument, Weisenborn lap steel, is it just opens you up to different ideas, and it takes you out of the realm of falling back on
Hmm.
your trick bag of
Normal stuff.
go-to
Yeah.
licks.
Absolutely. Man, if I played pedal steel, I probably wouldn't play anything else.
Yeah, I can't do pedal steel, but
Or lap steel. I need a lap steel too. Shoot.
I perform with the Pink Floyd tribute group, so it's necessary for me to do all the.
Very cool. Oh, neat. All right.
But it does open you up in a way of it's tuned to an open E minor chord.
Mm,
So you can play power chords on the bottom for like the song like One of These Days, but then you can play
okay.
melodies on the top three strings. But
Very cool.
it, I love the idea of any instrument that's just going to push you into a new, you know,
Sure.
open up your ideas for things. And some of the sounds that I've heard you get live, I was watching some clips from the Iridium, and I was like, man,
Mm,
that's such a great sound.
thanks. Yeah, I mean, that was a really fun 2 nights. I mean, we kind of just, got in there and just rocked out. And I ran a Fender Twin and a PRS HX amp and stereo, and so what's in the mix is kind of a blend of those two amps. The HX is kind of more of a Marshall circuit, and the Fender is a Fender, obviously. So, just put everything in the front of both amps. No effects loops or anything like that, and we just went for it. So
Yeah,
it was good. Live records are always terrifying for me, but I think that one turned out pretty good.
yeah. If you can just get out of the red light fever thing and just realize it, as soon as you get into it and you realize that you're just playing a gig and you kind of forget.
Right. You can do it. Yeah, right. I know. It took us most of this, I should say, I think like maybe 4 of the songs are from the first night and then the rest are from the second night. Because you're just more relaxed and kind of know what to expect. And thank goodness the Iridium, they're super pro, so we didn't have any technical issues. It wasn't like we had to stop or hard drive crashed in the middle of the
Right.
fourth song. Hang on, which I was terrified. Not that I would just assume that was going to happen, but that's what's always in the back of my mind when I do stuff like that. Is like oh, there was a buzz throughout the entire snare drum mic, and we can't, it's those kinds of things.
Have to scrap it because of a technical. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I fear the most is the technical stuff, not even the playing. Like I'll make music somehow, but if we didn't mic, one of the mics the amp didn't work, then what are we gonna do? So,
I I think the entire guitar playing community loves the new guitar, the Fiore, the Paul Reed Smith
the
guitar.
entire community. I don't know if the entire community.
I haven't heard any negative.
I've read some forums, not the entire community, but
Maybe I don't jump on enough of the forum. Probably better
probably why. Yeah, don't. Yeah, that'll
but
wreck you.
yeah, everything I've seen, like people reviewing the things, and it's a really I'm just fascinated about the inception of the guitar because it's clearly a Paul Reed Smith guitar, but it's quite a departure from what you would normally
Sure.
associate with.
Yeah, well, thanks, man. I'm really proud of it, and yes, the response overall has been overwhelmingly positive. So we're very grateful for that. Yeah, I mean, I guess in a sense, and Paul probably don't want me to say this, but it is kind of a PRS for people that maybe aren't hip to PRS. It's their aesthetic, their quality, and then we've sort of incorporated some sounds and some designs that they've messed with in the past, with a couple different designs, but it was time for them to do a guitar like this, I think.
Yeah.
And uh, yeah, it's been great. I mean, they came to me with kind of the idea to do a guitar. I had been working with them prior, just playing some of their instruments and helping them out with some demos and things like that. And they partially because of the success of the Silver Sky, they wanted to keep moving forward with their bolt-on neck line because they're kind of known as a set neck style guitar company. And they said, "Would you be interested in kind of coming up with something?" And I said, "Yeah, absolutely." So that's when we started drawing pictures and cutting wood and trying out pickups and bridges and fret wire and really getting our hands dirty and digging in. And we designed and built it uh, throughout 2020. So it was kind of an interesting time to design a guitar.
Maybe
A
a
lot
good
of
time for that, when you're
yeah, I mean, I guess right. I wasn't really gigging, which also made it a little hard because there were not too many options for me to road test the thing,
yeah,
But thankfully, in Texas, depending on your opinions, but they opened up a little earlier, and so we did start having some gigs around. So I was able to play the guitar out live a little bit and put it to battle, so to speak, and then get back on the phone and be like, this isn't right. I went for this note and it just didn't have the sauce, so we need to do something about what's going on at the 28th fret, not 20th fret, but the 22nd fret or whatever. And so it was a lot of trips back and forth to FedEx, shipping guitars back and forth, and but I'm really proud of what we ended up with. I play it almost exclusively now, not because I'm being paid to, but because I want to. You know, it's just one of those guitars where I can pick up and just get exactly the sound that I want for whatever kind of music, for whatever kind of, um, you know, gig. I mean, it really is one of those things where it's like, shoot, I got to get a guitar. I have to be on stage in 10 minutes. What do I do? I can grab it and go.
Yeah.
And I just did it. In China, speaking of, I didn't even bring a guitar. There was the distributor in China was able to provide a Fiore for the gigs in every city, brand new one out of the box. I just adjusted the action for about half of a millimeter and then played the gig.
Oh,
So
wow.
I didn't have to do anything to the guitars, no setups, really nothing.
Yeah.
Right out of the box, you know.
Um,
So that's what I want. I wanted like a really high end, nice working musicians do it all guitar that you can get your thing out of, you
yeah.
know.
And you typically like to have the bar where you can pull up just a little bit on it.
A little bit, yeah. I mean, not like Jeff Beck height, but
I just
just
threw
a
it in.
tad. Yeah, nowhere near. Or Scott Henderson's is like this apparently, or something. Or Luke's is really high. I was surprised by that when I picked up his guitar. I was like, dude, how do you? It's one of those things. It's like, I'm gonna play Luke's guitar. I'm gonna sound like Luke. Nope, you know,
That's
or
true.
like, nope, not even close. Uh, but yeah, I have a little bit of space in there. But the big kind of impetus for what the bridge was the weighted tremolo arm tip, which I think makes a big difference in how the whole thing feels. Because the trem itself is pretty sturdy. It's a lot. I think it's heavier than maybe a Godot or something like that. But it's good because you get a lot of nice tone and sustain out of it. So
Yeah. Was there a particular guitar that, or things that were kind of your go-to thing? Like if I'm going to do a guitar that's a signature thing that I would really like to have in terms of, fret wire or fingerboard.
yeah,
Was there a lot of,
yeah. I mean, I think so. Yeah, I mean the kind of the template for it for well, I should say one of the templates for it was this Don Grosh NOS retro guitar that you probably have seen me play. It's like that Sonic Blue. Well, it's no longer blue. It's almost like a grayish green because the nitro has faded off so much. But that's been my number one forever. And so that was kind of the benchmark. Like, well, it's got to sound as good as this, otherwise we can't, we're not doing it. And so that guitar had a couple, like a 10-inch radius maple neck swamp ash body, which was kind of where we started. And then, single humbucker. And then beyond that, it was like, okay, but let's take that idea and move it forward. Let's get some things out of it that maybe I wasn't getting out of the Grosh. And I think one of the nice things about the Fiore is that it really is a very flexible guitar. Like it's aggressive enough for a rock gig, uh, but you can make it sensitive enough for something else. And with some of my other guitars in the past, it was sort of like either or. They would exist really well in sort of like the sweet, dynamic, sensitive trio setting. But if I brought it into a band with 9 people, sometimes I felt like I would get swallowed up or something. So um, there were definitely some influences from some favorite guitars involved in the Fiore. And so it's kind of nice to see that lineage of instruments that I've had and loved kind of all come together to help me make something.
it's nice to, be a developer. You can create something that is your go-to thing that if you are doing a gig, you can get one out of the box and it's
Mm-hmm.
ready to go and
Yeah.
playable. And
Yeah. Well, I mean, PRS is that's been their calling card for the last 40 years. It's just that they're insanely well made guitars.
yeah,
People be like, well, I don't know if I really like the way they sound or it's not really my thing, but you pick them up and they play great immediately.
yeah.
And then that's not something you can find with a lot of other big companies. Really is not. We've all walked into a Guitar Center and picked up other guitars from other manufacturers and be like, oh, how did this get out the door? you know?
And then there are some companies that are pretty, flagship manufacturers that it is a little surprising that something
Yeah.
end up.
Yeah.
I was desperately hoping to get to the woodshed experience, but I had a gig with the Pink Floyd group and it
Oh man.
wasn't going to work. But I had met Andy at a John Petrucci camp, and couldn't
Cool.
be a more great guy. We had a blast. That was a really awesome thing in Anaheim, I think
Hmm.
2021, perhaps. But I was just kind of curious about the woodshed experience. I mean,
Yeah, man,
it-
that's I
like
look forward to that every year. I mean, assuming they invite me back every every year, but yeah, I'm really that's such a great experience, and I'm so proud. Has Andy been on your podcast?
no,
Oh,
I'm
you got to get him. Yeah, he's one of my good buddies, and I'm so proud that he pulled that off. It pulls it off every year. I mean, it makes me really happy to see that he's done all that stuff because I remember the very first year we did it was it 2020? Gosh, I think it might have been.
really.
Um, yeah, wait, because it's 2020, 2021, 22, 23. Yeah, because this year was the fourth year. So he pulled it off kind of in the pandemic, and we did it as safe as we could and et cetera. And but I remember he was really stressing out, like, oh my gosh, I play in this camp and now it's not going to happen, kind of thing. So just to see that it's continued to grow and it's getting bigger and bigger every year, and we keep having these great big name artists coming and sharing and everything, and it's really fun because a lot of the people now, the guests are repeat guests,
Right.
and so it's kind of become this cool community of people, and I see them at my gigs now, and they comment on social media posts or whatever, and I'm like, I know that guy, he's from Woodshed. um, but yeah, I mean, I've seen a few of them at several gigs, in different parts of the country, and so that's always really cool to see. It's how it's becoming this nice
Yeah.
community. But I would encourage anyone who likes guitar, doesn't matter what style of music you play. I mean, really, there's something there for everybody every year. And and even if there isn't, Andy Timmons can play any style ever created. So so he'll be there to teach you whatever you want to know.
Yeah. Yeah. Andy was a guest 2 weeks ago, and we're both Midwest guys, so we had a lot.
Right, he's an Indiana dude.
Yeah, I'm an Ohio guy, he's an Indiana guy, but
Hmm.
yeah, just the collection of players. You and Andy and Andy, two Andys, and then Greg and Brent.
Right.
I guess Eric Johnson was.
Eric was the big dog this year, yeah, and he was great. Oh my gosh, one of the most musical people. I mean, he did a solo master class, and he's up there. He's like very soft spoken. He's got his Strat and his twin amps. He's like, yeah, sometimes I just like to think about E major, and he plays like the most incredible set of everything was in the key of E major, but they were chords I'd never heard existed before that involved like these crazy stretches, and I was like, oh man, when I play E major, it doesn't sound like that. But yeah, so much music in that guy, man.
Yeah, I his instructional video, and he would kind of do that kind of thing. He's just playing these amazing voicings, and I'll just put a second on top, or I'll put maybe the
Yeah, and
doing
it's
all.
all instantaneous. He doesn't have to think. It's really cool.
Yeah, I think his piano background really helps him conceptually
Yeah, I would agree.
things and things. Plus the fact he's been doing it for a lifetime, but he is one of the
Sure.
most down to earth, humble, sweet guys that you could
Yeah.
ever.
Yeah,
So
real cool dude.
from what I understand, this is a bit, maybe a little bit different than some of the other camps in that it seemed like it was a lot more interactive between the people that were
It's
attending.
incredibly relaxed. Yeah. And I think that's what's been I think if more people knew that, there he probably you'd have to get 10 more cabins because it would be that much more. So yeah, if you're listening, this isn't like a thing where you can't hang out with us or anything. Like, we're hanging out, we're jamming. I mean, there's jams every night. I'll be up there playing drums, I'll be up there singing Metallica songs. Timmons will be playing piano, whatever. You come, bring your guitar, and it's a hang. It really is a hang. We're all eating dinner together. The meet and greet is 72 hours long, so to speak. So yeah, it's real special, man.
Yeah. Um, Shifting gears a little bit, I remember um, I had interviewed Jeff Pivar, I believe.
Oh yeah,
Jeff had worked with David Crosby.
right.
And, David absolutely adored you,
Mhm.
adored Snarky Puppy, and I know that you had played on his Sky Trails album, I believe.
Yeah, Snarky did a track or two on that record. Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, it'd be interesting to to hear a little bit about. He was such a fan of music. I mean,
Hmm.
I think some of his personal views may have been a little polarizing, but as a musician and somebody that was really you could just tell he absolutely lived for
Sure.
good music. He was quite a connoisseur of.
Yeah. Yeah, he was a special guy. He didn't like Van Halen much, but that's we can disagree on that one. Uh, but yeah, what a special guy. I remember the first time meeting him was when Snarky Puppy did our Family Dinner Volume 2 record in New Orleans, and he came in, and I had not met him, but I knew Michael had talked to him quite a bit, and it seemed like he was going to be a cool guy, but nobody really knew how cool he was until he came in and was just like part of the family for that weekend. I remember the pretty much the first thing he did when he walked into the studio was opened up his guitar and started showing me and Chris and Bob just stuff. I mean, like we didn't even really ask. He was like, "Hey, check out this cool tuning I got, guys," and we're just like, "Okay," And so he was just so giving and, like you said, just excited about being creative. And I think the older he got, there was kind of a period of time where he was like, it just exploded with creativity. He was just writing, writing, writing. Um, and yeah, he did the family dinner recording with us, and then on I think it was like the last day we got an email from Michael saying like, "Hey, Cross wants to hang out in the studio with us and do some more music, and can everybody stay a couple extra days?" And no one said no. Of course, everyone canceled whatever minuscule, meaningless plans we had, and so we hung out and recorded those one or two tracks for Sky Trails. And yeah, and we stayed in touch over the years. I went to his birthday party with some of the folks from Snarky a couple years back, and he was really kind. He remember he I bought this book. It was this photo book from the Birds,
Oh yeah.
band from which is my dad's like all time favorite band. And I was like, "Hey, Cross, would it be cool?" Because it was one of these things where like you could buy it with like Steven Still's signature and Graham Nash, but if you paid like extra, then we get like this one guy's signature. It's a sort of like tiered system. so so I was like, well, I know Dave, maybe he'll, and so I was able to get it signed by all three of them. Thanks to Cross, who sent an incredibly nice message to my dad and wrote it in the book. And um, he was always just a really just good guy, just nice guy, really caring. And so to get to be a small part of his musical legacy is pretty incredible.
Yeah. He,
Yeah.
from what I understand, when he loved something or somebody, that was imperative that he let that person know.
Hmm. Yeah. That's a very good way of putting it.
Yeah, he was very important to him to, and also to share that with, you know,
Yeah.
is for him to say how much he loved Snarky Puppy and
Yeah.
and uh,
Yeah.
God,
Yeah. I mean, I remember he came to Dallas to play with the band, and that's how I got to know Jeff Pivar. And we kind of, I think we saw him, came to like the and kind of the backstage, and he pointed, "Mark, you come on, let's go." And he just kind of picked me and my wife out of a crowd of people who were probably wanting to meet him. And we just went back onto I think he may have signed a couple autographs or something, and then we just went onto the tour bus and hung out, and just he was just the dude. He's just the dude. Yeah.
yeah, I think that the fact that he and Jan really pushed hard to you know get stuff recorded and get it
Yeah.
out there and try to as much as he could because being away from home I understand was really
He
tough
did
on
not like traveling. Yeah. And I mean, gosh, Jan is what a saint she is. I mean, just everything she did for him and that whole family. Um, but yeah, you're right. He didn't, I don't think he liked traveling.
him.
Yeah.
It was great to hear his love for Steely Dan on that track Rodriguez for a Night.
Mm.
Son James had put together. I don't know if you've heard that.
I don't think I heard that one, but I should. I
As soon
should.
as you as soon as you hear it, you just go, "Oh man, that's like kind of Gaucho era Steely Dan."
Mm. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, and James is doing his best to channel Michael Lamarty and on the acoustic
Mm.
piano. It's just and the groove is just fantastic. So it's kind of what you'd and I want to say Donald Fagen wrote the lyrics.
Okay, very
Song
cool.
James created the track.
Yeah,
Just if you get it, Rodriguez,
yeah,
it's got very. As soon as I heard the lyrics, I was like, man, that either he's doing his best to ape Donald, or that's
or somebody, or Donald actually wrote it.
Donald himself. But
That's cool. That's really cool. Well, all those that LA 70s Laurel Canyon and extended Sunset Strip crew, man. You
yeah,
know, what a
yeah,
cool time.
yeah, that uh, that just that whole vibe, the Laurel Canyon thing, and it was interesting because I think Walter and Donald, when they were in New York, they always longed for LA, and then when
Yeah,
LA, they always longed for New York.
interesting.
And being a Steely Dan fan, I was always trying to figure out at what period were they, like in Asia, felt like to me like a New York record.
Mm.
There's just something about but maybe it's just my
Yeah,
overacting.
you can kind of tell the kind of more. I mean, because yeah, I guess a lot of their stuff was bi-coastal in terms of how they recorded it, but yeah, I guess in my mind, maybe the sort of more darker, funkier stuff is New York, and
Yeah,
the kind of more open, dreamier stuff might be more SoCal. I don't know. You have
my,
to go track by track.
my rationale was it sounded to me like a song like Home at Last was like a feeling of longing for Southern California that was created in New
That was
York.
recorded in New York. That makes a lot of sense.
Kind
Yeah,
of, yeah, but yeah, all those that was such an education to me reading the liner notes for Steely Dan records and
me too.
Hugh McCracken, Larry Carlton, Dean Parks, Elliot Randall, Jay Graydon, all these,
Yeah.
and just the drummers,
Yep.
so,
Yeah, that's how I found out about Bernard Purdy. I mean, that's how I found out about a lot of my favorite musicians. Chuck Rainey, you know, Freddie Washington, Larry Carlton. Yeah, for sure.
and I think the great thing is that was kind of a springboard to go out and check out like the Crusaders stuff that Larry
Hmm.
had done, and then even though it was a while before he had worked with Steely Dan, or maybe right around the same time. It was a decade later before I found out about the Joni Mitchell stuff, where he's
Ah, right.
lines with the volume pedal and that kind of stuff. I just man,
Yeah. Yeah, that was a special time for music.
yeah.
I mean,
Were you a transcriber back in the day of when you were? I mean, would you sit down with recordings and write stuff out and either?
well, I'd pick it out by ear for
Yeah,
sure. I'm not much of a schooled in the ways of actual notation, but definitely, gosh, played the well, it was CDs in my day. Played along to bajillions. I mean, I would try to figure out anything, you know. And sometimes I would just turn on the radio and just play along to whatever was going on, whatever station that happened to be on at the time. But yeah, a lot of jamming to CDs in the bedroom, figuring stuff out that way.
it's a
So,
very dangerous game to get involved. Making comments about the way things used to be, because then you old guy. But I do think the idea of not being able to like if you figured out mean streets,
yeah,
man,
it's a hot topic button right now because our old boy
yeah,
Satch is getting some
yeah, that's
flame for it.
Andy, thankfully Andy came out for all of
That
us.
was the dumbest. It's like,
Yeah,
golly, I don't need. Andy already said what I would say, so I don't need to say anything.
perfectly worded. But anything like that technical or any of the stuff Eddie or Joe or Steve Vai, any of those guys,
Mm,
if you're
yeah,
figuring it out on your own, even if you're not getting 100% of the way there, it changes your trajectory as a player because even if you're getting pieces of it, it's leading you down into an avenue that you hadn't thought of already.
Right.
So there is a
Well,
great benefit to not having tab for something.
yes, I absolutely agree. I found that learning stuff by ear and probably playing it wrong is what has developed my sound. But I'm also trying to put myself in the shoes of a 17-year-old kid nowadays who has access to the videos and the YouTubes and the tabs and the Guitar Pro digital tabs and all these things. I'm thinking like, if I was 17, I'd probably want that too. Like I probably would use YouTube to learn guitar.
Right,
Uh, Maybe not realizing, and that's the weird thing is that we have to now, everything's at our fingertips now, and it's up to the individual to be the gatekeeper about
yeah,
how easy we want to make it for ourselves, because nowadays it's so, and I'm a guy that sells video guitar courses. Right, like I'm part of the quote unquote problem, I guess, but um even in the courses I try to tell people like, okay, I don't care if you play this the way I played it. Turn off the video and just play along to this track how you want to play to it. You know, because I think like you were saying, it's so important to just make sure your ear is doing the work first before your eyeballs.
right,
Because it's music, it's auditory, right? And
right,
if you don't know the exact fingerings or the exact thing that you do to play Mean Streets, well, then your version might be different in a cool way.
right. Yeah,
So
if you're taking it in phonetically, especially, uh, I do think that that helps your ability to retain that as you're playing live because you're drawing from
oh,
some,
for sure.
and it also gives you more melodies to choose from that come out. I mean, how many times have we been improvising a solo and we quote something? It's like we find this a string and we start pulling. Oh shit, yeah, and we try to find that. It's not always very obvious that you're going to quote Norwegian Wood by the Beatles.
But it's such a great melody.
It's a great melody, but it's little things like that. And I
Mm,
truly think the more that we absorb those things, because in the end, anybody that is just a music lover wants to hear melodies. It's the
mm,
most
totally. Yeah,
deliberate. Yeah, in context, I mean, melody out of time and out of time is not so great.
sure.
There's other things, but yeah, being melodic is a huge,
Yeah, I mean, I think your ear has to come first, and I think we were kind of talking about YouTube and things like that, and it's the temptation to learn from that and to develop your skill from that. But I'll tell you, and any other musician that's been in the game for a long time, is that you learn the most playing with other people. You learn the most being the worst musician in the band.
yeah,
But the most important part about it is in the band. It doesn't have to be a band, but like you need to find opportunities to play with other people, even if it's just you and one other person. That will expose so many of your flaws, but also highlight your strengths. Because music is communicative, and
yeah,
it's meant to be shared between people. And so you need to find situations where you can have that and develop
yeah.
that.
The other human byproduct of that is that it just treats you how to be a. If you're in a band,
Yeah, it also treats you how to not be a jerk. Hopefully.
because that's the thing that is the great unspoken thing for getting the bigger gigs as you climb up the ladder in your career is that 100% of the time it's about how are you as a hang
Oh, for sure.
us because it's a very fragile ecosystem, and
Correct.
being on the road and living together and being, everything is amplified. You get to know everybody's situation. There's nowhere to hide.
Nope.
And if you're not a good dude or woman, guy, whomever it might be, it's a very difficult. You'll be asked to. It'll be like the Frank Zappa thing. That will that be a window seat or an aisle because you're going home.
Ooh. At least they gave him the choice.
But yeah,
Oh man.
there's so many benefits to playing with other people and just getting out and playing in front of an audience, whether it's five.
That too. Yeah. That's a big thing, and it's a hard thing because I understand. I know that there's, the internet culture now has bred musicians that don't have to do that. Their phone is their audience. And it's an interesting time. You don't have. It's a lot of people don't even gig. There's musicians that I know that have hundreds and hundreds of thousands of Spotify streams and don't play shows.
Yeah.
They just make singles in their bedroom studios. And, that's an amazing concept to me. It wouldn't work for me. I couldn't do that. I can make singles, but I got to play the music in front of at
Right.
some point. I got to plug in the guitar and melt some faces, man. Like, you know,
Like just you know, standing near Nate's drums,
yeah.
hearing him play in real time and having that air move and have that interaction and that knowing look about when something's going well.
Or when something going wrong.
Because isn't that what we talk about when when we get together as a group of guys, it doesn't matter who you are.
Right.
We talk about the shit that happened that was completely messed up, and it's that tragedy plus time equals comedy. Eventually, you'll find it funny, and you'll
I
be able
like
to,
that.
you know,
I like that.
yeah, it's a very human thing to play with people, play in front of people, and there's never going to be a time when there's no value to that because even if you don't think that you like it, if you go out to see a show with other folks, there's community in that. You may not
Sure.
like the
Totally.
music, but you may enjoy the time together disliking the music.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
There's there's power in just doing stuff together. And I would think if we learned anything through this 2020 thing,
Mm.
that would be the big takeaway is, man, isn't it great to be with hanging out with other people?
Yeah.
You may not
God,
like
if I had
it.
to do one other, if I, oh man, yeah, never mind. I mean, like some people are great at the live stream elements of stuff. Like I just was just like, oh my gosh, I don't know what, I feel like I'm talking into the void, you know, but some people took to that really well. I couldn't wrap my head around it personally,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, it's. I think it's um, like you said, it's for some people, but not for
yeah.
most. I
I know Andy Timmons is like a genius at that, and he's still doing them.
Yeah,
He's figured he figured it out. I wish I could have figured it out.
yeah. It's. I think what he's got going on is he's so comfortable with the way it sounds and the way that he's putting it out there, and
Yeah, that's the big thing. I was never okay with how things sounded, and I was just felt like I sounded bad. But it seems like yeah, the cats that have gotten it, and maybe I should have just put some more work into it. I probably just quit too soon. But you
but
know,
I think we all had the belief that that it's not going away. It's just kind of a temporary.
yeah, right.
Did make going back out and playing uh, so much. I remember the first time we went back out, we had played the Sorg Opera House in Hamilton, Ohio, or Middletown, Ohio,
Mhm.
and I was like, they really showed up. Holy, yeah, because
Yeah.
I was thinking, yeah, because I don't follow all the ticket sales of the shows. Sometimes
Hmm.
I had no idea what to think, and then
Hmm.
come out and there's a full house. It's like, oh, thank God.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember the first couple gigs back, we had a couple local things here with my trio, my quartet. And it just felt I was like, "Wow, this is what a guitar cabinet sounds like." It's like I'm not playing through software right now. I'm playing a guitar through an amp in a room.
As nice as the quad cortex stuff is, and all the other cool modeling stuff,
Hmm.
if it's just a small Princeton amp, there's something when you've got an amp sitting on the floor and you're getting some of the vibration off the floor and you've got the movement of the speaker and and certain amps are even better being so immediate. But
Yeah.
if you've ever played through it, really, I don't know how you could just completely say goodbye. I could say
Yeah.
gigs that needed to be a fly gig or something, but
Hmm.
there's something so tactile and so immediate and so touch responsive about,
Yeah,
especially for somebody that plays with hybrid picking and or any kind of
right.
variation of
Anything with dynamics. Yeah.
dynamic.
Yeah, I mean, I've been noticing that because I use plugins a lot. Yeah, I use plugins. I use Kempers often for a lot of the studio work that I do. But I've finally really just dug into. That's why you see this stack of heads here. I'm doing another solo record right now, and I'm still not miking cabs, but I am using reactive load IR response box.
Okay.
Um, and what I've noticed is that even though the cabinets are technically digital, the heads are still real, the tubes are still responding. And when I A/B them with the digital stuff, there's a difference. There, I mean, there's the tubes. There's a warmth to the thing. There's a depth to the sound. Um, and I've noticed that like I have to be real careful if I craft a track, if I'm going to be blending digital and real stuff, because you really can hear the difference. So if I'm going to do a track and it's like 90% real tube amp heads, then I really only am going to use plugin for one specific thing, like maybe a solo or something, or like one little rhythm part, and vice versa. Because if you blend the two 50/50, it sounds disjointed.
Oh,
Um, what I've noticed. So yeah, it's kind of been a fun
yeah.
trial and error process of, because I do have some plugins that I like, and I'm like, well, this is a cool sound, but is it going to work with this rhythm track that I laid down with this 1983 concert amp? Maybe not. One of these things does not sound like the other.
Right.
So,
Is it the Sur model?
yeah, but that thing is awesome. It sounds really good, and I think it main what I'm getting at is that even though it's not a real cabinet, it maintains the warmth of a tube amp, which I think is the thing that we lose when we just do ones and zeros completely. Is there's the digital thing has this, there's a high end thing that you can't get rid of with a lot of the plugins that real amps don't have. And but I mean high end, I don't mean expensive. I mean like high frequency. There's a thing to the top of the note that I notice,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, and the guys that engineer the stuff, the modeling stuff, they do it each year. It seems like it's getting
It's
better.
getting better and better. Yeah.
There is in the end, if you're perceiving it, even if it's absolutely 100% true in your case, but even if it was, let's say, it was in your imagination, which it's clearly not, it's still there.
It's still there. Right. Well, I mean, and that's the thing. And I guess what I'm saying about blending sounds is that, like, you can commit to doing a track, a song that's 100% Kemper or 100% plug-in, and it'll sound fine. If you know how to work it and get good sounds out of it to fit the music. Um, but they're the worlds are still different enough that blending them together can get really tricky, which I think is why a lot of people are still sort of split between camps. It's like they either do everything with their plugins or they only use real amps, you know,
Yeah.
because yeah, they are different. They're different tools, but that's also why you have all these guitars because they're different tools too. So that's what I tell myself.
Yeah, my wife showed me this great meme. It was there's a scene in Lord of the Rings where Frodo and Gandalf are like staring at each other, and they slowly go from a blank stare into this crazy laugh. And the meme is um, me deciding that I don't need to ever buy a new guitar again.
Right, right,
Yeah, right.
yeah,
That
yeah,
yeah, there is something about the purchase of a new amp, or not new amp, but a new guitar that
yeah.
is a very special thing.
It's always inspiring.
Yeah, I mean, and some I think George Harrison was a guy that said that every guitar has songs built into them. You know,
Oh yeah, all right.
you just have to take the time to find out what song is this gonna,
Right.
either that or it's just a great great justification for buying it.
Yes, that's a good. You can't. Yeah, if you tell your spouse, like, but honey, it has songs built into it. And they go, oh, okay, I guess you need it then.
Man, Mark, awesome, man. Thank you
One
so
take.
much.
Yeah, for sure. Great talking to you, John.
Yeah, I'm hoping to get down to Grapevine and see some folks. So if I'm down there,
Okay.
I'll look up you and Andy, and maybe
Yeah, come anytime.
maybe we'll go to Tolbert's on Main Street and see Andy play bass in that surf band with.
Right. Gosh, I still have never been there.
Oh,
And everyone plays there, and I've never been up to Tolbert, so I got to get in there.
and it had some really good chili.
Yeah, they get some good music.
Yeah, and
So,
there's a barbecue place. You're in Fort Worth, right?
correct.
Cooper's Barbecue. Have you
Yeah,
been?
Cooper's is nice.
So,
The if you ever are in deep in Texas, go to the original Cooper's in Llano.
Milano.
It'll change your life. It's probably my favorite barbecue on the planet.
Oh, awesome.
So, yeah.
Fabulous.
All right.
So much, man. It's great talking.
Okay, John. Have a great Thanksgiving, man.
All right.
Thank you for tuning in to the Guitar Hang Podcast, interviews with noteworthy guitar players from around the world. Go ahead and hit the subscribe button and ring the bell for notifications to stay updated on our latest episodes.